This is the 7th day of the August 91 7-day retreat at Springwater. We won't have questions this morning and a talk as usual, but read from the writings and talks of Wang Po, who was a Chinese Zen teacher, lived about 1,000 years ago, and Krishnamurti, who died a few years ago. The materials are copyrighted, so there will not be a cassette for sale, yet we are taping it if someone wants to listen to it again. We're not presenting Wang Po or Krishnamurti here. Particularly the selections from Wang Po have been Sanskrit words at times have been changed into English words, sentences, and paragraphs omitted. We're reading from it because people have found it very clarifying over the years, over many, many years. No one has yet told me they're sick and tired of it. That's why I keep reading from it. And there are always quite a number of new people here, or people who have been here very little. And who might find this material very interesting. The first book is called The Zen Teaching of Wang Po, on the transmission of the mind, rendered into English by John Blofeld. The word Buddha, as it is used by Wang Po, does not only refer to the historical person of Gautama Buddha, but to the mind without division. Or someone manifesting that mind without division. The Master said to me, or these talks and dialogues were written down by Pe Su, who was a disciple of Wang Po, a scholar in Buddhist scriptures, and also the governor of the province. The Master said to me, all the Buddhas and all sentient beings are nothing but the one mind beside which nothing exists. This mind, which is without beginning, is unborn and indestructible. It is not green nor yellow and has neither form nor appearance. It does not belong to the categories of things which exist or do not exist, nor can it be thought of in terms of young or old. It is neither long nor short, big or small, for it transcends all limits, measures, names, traces, and comparisons. It is that which you see before you. Begin to reason about it, and you at once fall into error. It is like the boundless void, which cannot be fathomed or measured. The one mind alone is Buddha, and there is no distinction between the Buddha and sentient beings, but that sentient beings are attached to forms and so seek externally for Buddhahood. By their very seeking they lose it, for that is using mind to grasp mind. Even though they do their utmost for a full eon, they will not be able to attain to it. They do not know that if they put a stop to conceptual thought and forget their anxiety, the Buddha will appear before them. For this mind is Buddha, and Buddha is all living beings. It is not the less for being manifested in ordinary beings, nor is it greater for being manifested in the Buddhas. Students of the way should be sure that the four elements composing the body do not constitute the self, that the self is not an entity, Then it follows from this that the body is neither self nor entity. Moreover, the 5 aggregates composing the mind, which is thinking, sensing, feeling, willing, consciousness, the 5 aggregates composing the mind do not constitute a self or an entity. Hence it follows mind is neither self nor entity. The 6 sense organs, together with their 6 types of perception and objects of perception, must be understood in the same way. All are separately and together void. There's only mind source, limitless in extent and of absolute purity. This is a dialogue. It took place 1,000 years ago. What is the way, and how must it be followed? What sort of thing do you suppose the way to be, says Wangpo, that you should wish to follow it? Questioner. What instructions have the masters everywhere given for meditation practice and the study of the truth? Wangpo, words used to attract the dull of wit are not to be relied on. Questioner. If those teachings were meant for the dull-witted, I have yet to hear what truth has been taught to those of really high capacity. Wangpo, if they are really people of high capacity, where could they find people to follow? If they seek from within themselves, they will find nothing tangible. How much less can they find a teaching worthy of their attention elsewhere? Do not look to what is called the true teaching by preachers, for what sort of truth could that be? Questioner. If that is so, should we not seek for anything at all? Wangpo, by conceding this, you would save yourself a lot of mental effort. Desu. But in this way, everything would be eliminated. There cannot just be nothing. Wangpo, who called it nothing? Who was this fellow? You wanted to seek for something. Questioner, since there is no need to seek, why do you also say that not everything is eliminated? Wangpo, not to seek is to rest tranquil. Who told you to eliminate anything? Look at the void in front of your eyes, meaning everything, without naming or reacting. That's the void. Look at the void in front of your eyes. How can you produce it or eliminate it? Questioner, if I could reach this truth, would it be like the void? Wangpo, morning and night I have explained to you that the void is both one and manifold. I said this as a temporary expedient, but you are building up concepts from it. Questioner, do you mean we should not form concepts as human beings normally do? Wangpo, I have not prevented you. But concepts are related to the senses, and when feeling takes place and concepts are formed, wisdom is shut out. Questioner, then should we avoid any feeling in relation to the truth? Wangpo, where no feeling arises, who can say that you are right? Pesu, why do you speak as though I was mistaken in all the questions I've asked your reverence? Wangpo, you're a man who doesn't understand what is said to him. What is all this about being mistaken? You get it, we always, am I right, am I wrong? And then we don't listen. Taking everything personal, then we don't listen. Question, up to now you have refuted everything which has been said. You have done nothing to point out the true Dharma or the truth to us. Wangpo, in the truth there is no confusion, but you produce confusion by such questions. What sort of truth can you go seeking for? Or true teaching? Questioner, since the confusion arises from my questions, what will your reverence's answer be? Wangpo, observe things as they are and don't pay attention to other people. There are some people just like mad dogs barking at everything that moves, even barking when the wind stirs among the grass and leaves. Once I put this question to the Master: how many of the 400 or 500 persons gathered here on this mountain have fully understood your reverence's teaching? The Master answered, their number cannot be known. Why? Because this way is through mind awakening. How can it be conveyed in words? Speech only produces some effect when it falls on the uninstructed ears of children. When we talk of the knowledge I may gain, the learning I may achieve, my intuitive understanding, my deliverance from rebirth, and my moral way of living, our successes make these concepts seem pleasant to us, but our failures make them appear deplorable. What is the use of all that? I advise you to remain uniformly quiescent, and above all, activity. Activity like, for instance, storyline about myself. Something happens, that's it. Why extra activity about it? If it happens, can it be seen? He says, remain above it, whatever that means. Do not deceive yourselves with conceptual thinking, and do not look anywhere for the truth. For all that is needed is to refrain from allowing concepts to arise. It is obvious that mental concepts and external perceptions are equally misleading, and that the way of the Buddhas is as dangerous to you as the way of demons. Though others may talk of the way of the Buddhas as something to be reached by various pious practices and scripture study, you must have nothing to do with such ideas. A perception, sudden as blinking, that subject and object are one, will lead to a deeply mysterious, wordless understanding, and by this understanding you will awake to the truth. When you happen upon someone who has no understanding, you must claim to know nothing. He may be delighted by his discovery of some way to enlightenment, yet if you allow yourselves to be persuaded by him, you will experience no delight at all, but suffer both sorrow and disappointment. Even if you do obtain from him some trifling method, it will only be a thought-constructed thing having nothing to do with Zen or truth. Truth is something never lost to you even in moments of delusion, nor is it gained at the moment of enlightenment. It depends on nothing and is attached to nothing. It is all-pervading, spotless beauty. It is the self-existent and uncreated absolute. Ah, it is a jewel beyond all price. when the moment of understanding comes, do not think in terms of understanding or not understanding or not understanding, for none of these is something to be grasped. The truth of thusness when grasped is grasped, but he who grasps it is no more conscious of having done so than someone ignorant of it is conscious of his failure. This truth of thusness unto now, so few people have come to understand it, that it is written, in this world how few are they who lose their egos. Refrain from seeking Buddhahood, since any search is doomed for failure. Some madman shrieking on the mountaintop, on hearing the echo far below, may go to seek it in the valley. But oh, how vain his search! Once in the valley he shrieks again, and straightway climbs to search among the peaks. Why, he may spend 1,000 rebirths or 10,000 eons searching for the source of those sounds by following their echoes. Far better that you make no sound, for then there will be no echo, no knowing, no sound, no track, no trace. But how can we prevent ourselves from falling into the error of making distinctions between this and that? It's not a matter of making discerning the difference, but the labeling, the reacting, the associating, the denying, the avoiding, all of that, or grasping. Wangpo, by realizing that though you eat the whole day through, no single grain has passed your lips, and that a day's journey has not taken you a single step forward. Also, by uniformly abstaining from such notions as self and other, do not permit the events of your daily lives to bind you, but do not withdraw yourselves from them. Avoid the error of thinking in terms of past, present, and future. The past has gone, the present is a fleeting moment, and the future has not yet come. When sitting, meditation, sit in the proper position, stay perfectly tranquil, and do not permit the least movements of your minds to disturb you. Sometimes I add, as I do now, sit, whatever position is comfortable and relaxing. Not have this image of a proper position where this goes the one who is practicing. The image of that is a cramp. Stay perfectly tranquil. Well, we'll have to see what happens. These intentions can spell trouble. Do not permit the least movements of your minds to disturb you. What if they do? Can disturbance be seen to? Listened to like the wind and the trees? This alone is what is called liberation. Be diligent, be diligent. Somebody once said, why does he say that? Or why do you read that? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. This time I did. That's what he said. These selections, we'll see how many we will read, are from Krishnamurti's notebook. a journal kept less than a year in many different countries where he was talking. And it was in the 60s that this was written. The selections here are written in Switzerland and in France, and maybe we'll get one from India. It was a beautiful evening in the valley along the stream. The green meadows so rich in pasturage, the clean farmhouses and the rapturous clouds so full of color and clarity. There was one that hung over the mountain with such vivid brilliancy that it seemed to be the favorite of the sun. The valley was cool, pleasant, and so intensely alive. There was a quietness about it and a peace. Modern farm machinery was there, but they still used the scythe, and the pressure and the brutality of civilization hadn't touched it. The heavy electric cables on pylons ran through the valley, and they too seemed a part of that unsophisticated world. As we walked along the narrow, grassy path through fields, the mountains with their snow and color seemed so close and delicate, so utterly unreal. The goats were bleating to be milked. Quite unexpectedly, all this extravagant beauty, color, the hills, this rich earth, this intense valley, all this was within one. It wasn't within one. One's own heart and brain were so completely open, without the barrier of time and space, so empty of thought and feeling that there was only this beauty without sound or form. It was there, and everything else ceased to be. The immensity of this love, with beauty and death, was there, filling the valley and one's whole being, which was that valley. It was an extraordinary evening. There is no renunciation. What is given up is ever there, and renunciation, giving up, sacrifice, do not exist where there is understanding. Understanding is the very essence of non-conflict. Renunciation is conflict. To give up is the action of will, which is born of choice and conflict. To give up is to exchange, and in exchange there is no freedom, but only more confusion and misery. 2 days later, coming down from the valleys and high mountains into a big, noisy, dirty town affects the body. Footnote says he had flown to Paris, where he stayed with friends in an 8th-floor apartment. It was a lovely day when we left, through deep valleys, waterfalls, and deep woods to a blue lake and wide roads. It was a violent change from the peaceful, isolated place to a town that is noisy night and day, to a hot, clammy air. Sitting quietly in the afternoon, looking over the rooftops, watching the shape of roofs and their chimneys, most unexpectedly, that benediction, that strength, that otherness came with gentle clarity. It filled the room and remained. It is here as this is being written. Next day. From the top of an 8th-floor window, the trees along the avenue were becoming yellow, russet, and red in the midst of a long line of rich green. From this height, the tops of the trees were brilliant in their color, and the roar of the traffic came up through them, somewhat softening the noise. There's only color, not different colors. There's only love, and not different expressions of it. The different categories of love are not love. when love is broken up into fragmentation as divine love and carnal love, it ceases to be love. Jealousy is the smoke that smothers the fire. Looking down on that mass of color with different colors, there's only purity, however much it may be broken up. But impurity, however much it may be changed, covered over, resisted, will always remain impure like violence. Purity is not in conflict with impurity. Impurity cannot become pure any more than violence can become non-violence. Violence simply has to cease. There are two pigeons who have made their home under the slate roof across the courtyard. The female goes in first, and then slowly, with great dignity, the male follows, and then for the night they remain there. Early this morning they came out, the male first, and then the other. They stretched their wings, preened, and laid down flat on the cold roof. Soon, from nowhere, other pigeons came, a dozen of them. They settled around these two, preening, cooing, pushing each other in a friendly way. Then all of a sudden they all flew away except the first two. The sky was overcast. There were heavy clouds full of light on the horizon and a long streak of blue sky. Meditation has no beginning and no end. In it there is no achievement and no failure, no gathering and no renunciation. It is a movement without finality, and so beyond and above time and space. The experiencing of it is the denying of it, for the experiencer is bound to time and space, memory and recognition. The foundation for true meditation is that passive awareness, which is the total freedom from authority and ambition, envy and fear. Meditation has no meaning, no significance whatsoever without this freedom, without self-knowing. As long as there is a choice, there is no self-knowing. Choice implies conflict, which prevents the understanding of what is. Wandering off into some fancy, into some romantic beliefs is not meditation. The brain must strip itself of every myth, illusion, and security and face the reality of their falseness. There is no distraction. Everything is in the movement of meditation. The flower is the form, the scent, the color, and the beauty that is the whole of it. Tear it to pieces, actually or verbally, then there is no flower, only a remembrance of what was, which is never the flower. Meditation is the whole flower in its beauty, withering and living. This is in India. The sky was burning with fantastic color, great splashes of incredible fire. The southern sky was aflame with clouds of exploding color, and each cloud was more intensely furious than the other. The sun had set behind the sphinx-shaped hill, but there was no color there. It was dull without the serenity of a beautiful evening. But the east and the south held all the grandeur of a fading day. To the east it was blue, the blue of a morning glory, a flower so delicate that to touch it is to break the delicate, transparent petals. It was the intense blue with incredible light of pale green, violet, and the sharpness of white. It was sending out from east to west rays of this fantastic blue right across the sky. And the south was now the home of vast fires that could never be put out. Across the rich green of rice fields was a stretch of sugar cane in flower. It was feathery, pale violet, the tender light beige of a morning dove. It stretched over and across the luscious green rice fields with the evening light through it to the hills, which were almost the same color as the sugar cane flower. The hills were in league with the flower, the red earth and the darkening sky. And that evening the hills were shouting with joy, for it was an evening of their delight. The stars were coming out, and presently there was not a cloud, and every star shone with astonishing brilliance in a rain-washed sky. And early this morning, with dawn far away, Orion held the sky and the hills were silent. Only across the valley, the hoot of a deep-throated owl was answered by a light-throated one at a higher pitch. In the clear, still air, their voices carried far, and they were coming nearer until they seemed quite among a clump of trees. Then they rhythmically kept calling to each other, one at a lower note than the other, till a man called and a dog barked. It was meditation in emptiness, a void that had no border. Thought could not follow. It had been left where time begins, nor was there feeling to distort love. This was emptiness without space. The brain was in no way participating in this meditation. It was completely still, and in that stillness, going within itself and out of itself, but in no way sharing with this vast emptiness. The totality of the mind was receiving, or perceiving, or being aware of what was taking place, and yet it was not outside of itself, something extraneous, something foreign. Thought is an impediment to meditation, but only through meditation can this impediment dissolve. For thought dissipates energy, and the essence of energy is freedom from thought and feeling. And the next day, it had become very cloudy. All the hills were heavy with them, and clouds were piling up in every direction. It was spitting with rain, and there wasn't a blue patch anywhere. The sun had set in darkness, and the trees were aloof and distant. There's an old palm tree that stood out against the darkening sky, and whatever light there was held by it. The riverbeds were silent, their red sand moist, but there was no song. The birds had become silent, taking shelter among the thick leaves. A breeze was blowing from northeast, and with it came more dark clouds and a spattering of rain, but it hadn't begun in earnest. That would come later in gathering fury. And the road in front was empty. It was red, rough, and sandy, and the dark hills looked down on it. It was a pleasant road with hardly any cars, and the villagers with their ox-drawn carts going from village to village. They were dirty, skeleton skin, in rags, and their stomachs drawn in, but they were wiry and enduring. They had lived like that for centuries, and no government is going to change all this overnight. But these people had a smile, though their eyes were weary. They could dance after a heavy day's labor, and they had fire in them. They were not hopelessly beaten down. The land had not had good rains for many years, and this may be one of those fortunate years which may bring more food for them and fodder for their cattle. And the road went on and joined at the mouth of the valley, the big road with few buses and cars. And on this road, far away, were the cities with their filth, industries, rich houses, temples, and dull mines. But here on this open road, there was solitude and the many hills full of age and indifference. Meditation is the emptying the mind of all thought, for thought and feeling dissipate energy. They are repetitive, producing mechanical activities which are a necessary part of existence. But they are only part, and thought and feeling cannot possibly enter into the immensity of life. Thought and feeling cannot possibly enter into the immensity of life. Quite a different approach is necessary, not the path of habit, association, and the known. There must be freedom from these. Meditation is the emptying of the mind of the known. It cannot be done by thought or by the hidden prompting of thought, nor by desire in the form of prayer, nor through the self-effacing hypnotism of words, images, hopes. All these have to come to an end, easily, without effort and choice, in the flame of awareness. And there, walking on that road, there was complete emptiness of the brain, and the mind was free of all experience, the knowing of yesterday, though 1,000 yesterdays have been. Time, the thing of thought, had stopped. Literally, there was no movement before and after. There was no going or arriving or standing still. Space as distance was not. There were the hills and bushes, but not as high and low. There was no relationship with anything, but there was an awareness of the bridge and the passerby. The totality of the mind, in which is the brain, with its thoughts and feelings, was empty. And because it was empty, there was energy, a deepening and widening energy without measure. All comparison, measurement belonging to thought, and so to time. The otherness was the mind without time. It was the breath of innocence and immensity. Words are not reality. They are only means of communication, but they are not the innocence and the immeasurable. Emptiness is alone. We will end here for today.